With this constant and obsessional push towards net zero, you know the thing, diesel and petrol ban, getting rid of our boilers out of our houses and all other weird and wonderful innovations that they're coming up with to try and push us into a corner. You've got to wonder why the obsession, what's really going on. We're obviously not being told the whole truth somewhere, particularly when you look at places like India and China that puff out a lot more crap than we ever do over the course of a year. Well, I was sent some very interesting information and I want to share it with you. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's the last one of the day, a little bit of an eye-opener, all about net zero. Did you know the term carbon budget? Yes, I didn't either. I'd never heard of it until I read this. I'm going to read this article to you verbatim because it's got some very, very interesting information in it. I'll of course link it below so you can go over it yourself. Here we go. Little known to the voting public, like most things, Conservatives, Labour and Lib Dem have all signed up to legally binding 5-year plans known as carbon budgets. Put that in your head, carbon budgets, 5-year plans, which stipulate a detailed programme to re-engineer our society to cut emissions by a specific amount. Any deviation could be open to legal challenge, meaning governments have almost zero leeway to delay or cancel these measures like bans on boilers and petrol cars, no matter how unpopular they are or how impoverished it would make people. We're now on our 4th carbon budget, valid from 2023 to 2027. Did you realise that the next 2, up until 2037, have already been enshrined in law, making a mockery of the next 2 or even 3 general elections? Were you aware that all of the consumer-facing changes in 18 months? No newly built home will be fitted with a gas boiler in 7 years' time. It will be illegal to buy new petrol cars in 12 years. You will no longer be allowed to replace your existing boiler like for like. Have been accounted for in the plans, gravely limiting room for political manoeuvre. Did you realise that any significant deviation from these carbon budgets would trigger legal action from pressure groups? As Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband pushed through the Climate Change Act in 2008, committing to cut emissions by 80% on 1990 levels by 2050, with the support of all but 5 MPs. It was the equivalent of another Maastricht Treaty. We know what happened there. A huge shift that will in time trigger a furious reaction from the electorate when it realises it's no longer in control. It was opposite that in 2019, Theresa May, fresh from her attempts at sabotaging Brexit, amended the Climate Change Act by statutory instrument, increasing the target to 100% cut in emissions by 2050. That distant date was lulled many into a false sense of flexibility. Why can't we delay the ban on combustion engines to 2025 or even later, naive souls ask, and still meet net zero on time? The reality is it could well be unlawful because cuts to emissions must be phased in according to a strict timetable. The government is obliged to set binding 5-year carbon budgets that cap the maximum amount of emissions allowed during each period. Each budget is much tougher than the previous one. Meeting them is no joke. They need to be legislated 12 years in advance and be accompanied by credible policies to deliver them in full. Miliband's Act created the Climate Change Committee, a ridiculously influential quango which advises the government on the level of each budget and how much of a contribution each sector should make. Through a combination of a recession, continued deindustrialisation, insufficient house and infrastructure building and the shift towards renewable energy, the UK met its first, second and third carbon budgets without needing to try too hard. We are now into our 4th, requiring a 52% fall in emissions compared with 1990. This too could be manageable, partly because of a stronger than expected sale of electric cars. But the pain is starting, and the backlash from landlords, from motorists, is beginning. Real Brexit intensity political warfare will undoubtedly break out ahead of the fifth budget, set to run from 2028 to 2032, and especially the sixth, 2033 to 2037, which will include aviation and shipping, coincide with a ban on new petrol cars and all new gas boilers, a massive, huge, costly insulation drive, and require a cumulative 77% cut in emissions. The government has very little leeway if it wishes to continue to accept the structures of the Climate Change Act. Bit of a long one, this. I wanted to read it to you word for word, so didn't make any blunders on it. Have a look at the link in the description below. Digest it again. But it all makes perfect sense, and you can see how it ties into everything else that's going on and all the little clues and snippets we see here, there and everywhere. Crazy, crazy weird times we live in, huh? Anyway, thank you very much for the support for the channel, everybody. Please continue to keep doing what you're doing. We're growing really quite nicely, and I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, I will see you for a live on Sunday. We've got some family bits and bobs going on, so not quite sure. I'll confirm that up over the weekend, and I will certainly be back on Monday with more content. Enjoy yourselves, guys, and I'll see you soon. Toodaloo.